Alright guys, welcome back to Racing Direct, and now it's about time we jump into the Fernando Alonso and George Russell incident. So please make sure you've hit subscribe, like this video, let's jump right into it. So yeah, I wanted to give this its own little segment because it is one of the more bizarre incidents you will see in F1. It's very rare that we see a driver receive a 20-second time penalty for an accident where two cars didn't even make contact with each other. So of course, in the closing stages of the Australian Grand Prix this past weekend, we were all waiting to see if George Russell was going to catch Fernando Alonso. He was in a hot pursuit of him in the last few laps, and then right on the final lap, he was getting pretty close to him, and then all of a sudden, we all know the massive accident. After the race ended, a couple hours later, it was revealed that Fernando Alonso had a 20-second penalty from that incident that moved him down 2 positions behind Tsunoda and Stroll. And to be honest, I had no idea what they were talking about when it was first announced. I really had to do some digging, and the explanation for the penalty was a little surprising to me. So after the accident, after the race concluded, Russell was interviewed and he revealed that it was a little surprising how quickly he closed up the gap to Alonso in that particular corner where he crashed, because he was stating that it looked like Alonso slowed down a lot more than usual. So both drivers were summoned to the stewards, explained the situation. Alonso did reveal that he sacrificed his entrance to the corner a little more than usual to get a better exit. It also happened to throw Russell off and put him into the dirty air, and the stewards decided that this move from Alonso was a little dangerous. They believe that sudden change or decrease in speed from Alonso really was the catalyst in this accident, and it's now highly debatable. Do you guys think that this deserved a 20-second penalty, or do you deserve less, or maybe it didn't deserve a penalty at all? Let's look into it a little bit more. So watching Alonso's telemetry in that incident, and he openly admitted to this, yes, he did let off a little earlier and a little more than usual than he was in the previous laps to sacrifice that speed to get a better exit, but given the distance between the two cars when they entered the corner, I'm sure Alonso wasn't expecting Russell to have that big of an accident, or I'm sure he wasn't even really expecting him to go off at all. He was definitely trying to throw Russell off a little bit with that kind of maneuver, because that obviously would have given him a bit more of an advantage when they entered that double DRS zone that was coming up just a little bit ways down the track. So yes, Alonso knew exactly what he was doing. However, I don't think his intention was malicious at all. I think this was a really clever tactic. We saw him do something similar to Perez in the closing stages of Brazil last season, and it worked to his advantage. He got that extra little bump that he needed down the straightaway in the DRS zone. I think it's just a wily veteran who pulled a very cunning move. Now, from Russell's side, yes, definitely you can see the closing speed change from the previous laps when you see Alonso entering that corner and Russell closing up behind him. There was definitely a stronger decrease in speed. However, from my opinion, I don't know, I feel like Russell had a lot of room to make a bit better of decision, and ultimately, I think the closing speed has really caught him off guard, and he overcorrected, and that obviously threw him into the gravel, and then caused him to roll on his side. Because many people would have assumed in an incident like this that Fernando Alonso potentially brake tested George Russell. If that was the case, then yes, I would have understood the penalty a little bit more. However, the brakes were touched in this incident, but it was such a light tap on the pedal, even the steward stated it had no effect on this crash. Alonso was also reporting a throttle issue. If you even hear his engine from the onboard in the clip during the crash, can't really play it on this or I'll get copyright strike. However, if you do go and listen to it, he is complaining about the throttle, and you can clearly hear that something does sound a little bit stuck, so maybe he actually did have a problem that he was trying to correct. So yes, there was no actual brake test involved in this incident. That little tap had nothing to do with the actual accident. Potentially that was Alonso just trying to figure out that strange throttle issue he was potentially having, or certainly sounded like he was having, and he even complained on the radio about it. Now, from Russell's side of things, we also see that he did miss his braking point by about 7 meters. If you actually study his previous laps when he was hitting his braking points, that little tap that he makes on the pedal was done 7 meters earlier, the previous laps. I'm not really sure if Alonso letting off and changing his speed really threw him off and he got distracted and he didn't actually see the braking point when he got there, or maybe saw it too late. That could have attributed to his overcorrection that caused him to go off track. I'm not really sure, but there was definitely a change in his braking point as well. So it wasn't just Alonso. I'm not sure if maybe Russell was getting a little overambitious and trying to carry more speed into the corner than usual to try and get ahead for that next DRS zone. And maybe that could have potentially thrown him off as well. And it could have just been a culmination of those two things. Alonso letting off earlier, Russell trying to brake a little bit later, and that's what ultimately might have caused him to crash. Now, do I think that he actually deserved Fernando Alonso's 20-second penalty? I don't really think so. Yes, it definitely had an effect on Russell's crash, but I mean, Russell is responsible for his car too. I think he just needs to be a little more aware and needs to make a better correction in that scenario. Now, yes, I know a lot of people will disagree with me. However, I just feel that he had plenty of room to make a better judgment call and make the correction that needs to be made. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, Russell is still fairly new to Formula 1. He hasn't been around that long, certainly not as long as someone like Fernando Alonso. I just feel like this is a little bit of experience outweighing a little bit of inexperience in this scenario. Now, don't forget, just last year in Singapore, we had that crazy last lap battle where Russell also made a crucial mistake on the final lap and put himself into the wall. I feel like it just needs a bit more development in these kinds of scenarios where you're chasing down a position in the closing stages of a Grand Prix. I feel like other drivers, maybe Verstappen or Hamilton, probably wouldn't have lost the car there. Again, I think that really just comes down to experience. Personally, again, for me, I don't really think this penalty is just, especially 20 seconds I thought was incredibly harsh. We've seen some scarier accidents in the past that have not received this harsh of a penalty where two cars didn't even make contact with each other. I just don't really understand this penalty too much at the end of the day. Yes, again, just to summarize, Alonso let off a little more than usual. However, if Russell was a little closer to him, if he was right up on his gearbox when he did that, then it would have made sense to penalize him. In this case, though, I thought there was plenty of racing room, and I think it was just a bit of an experience in an overcorrection from Russell. Really caught him off guard when Alonso made that maneuver, and that, to me, is on George Russell solely. But again, we have the freedom to disagree here, people. This is simply my opinion from what I've seen in studying the clips, the onboards, the telemetries. Basically, that's my conclusion. I just feel that the wrong call was made in this scenario and is a little unfair to Fernando Alonso. Of course, I want to hear your opinions though, guys. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think the penalty was just right? Do you think it was too harsh? Or do you think there should have been no penalty at all? And the blame in this incident falls solely on George Russell. Let me know what you guys think. As always, make sure you hit subscribe and like. Really appreciate it, guys. We'll see you next time on Racing Direct.